Hello, and how are you? Today's or this evening's subject I want to cover is I noticed that Germany seemed to be taking in more, more Muslim refugees than anybody else. Now, what's interesting is that indeed Germany, like anyone else, does not have a positive history. But I would like America and Britain to tell me that they have a positive history. I would like America and Britain to tell me that they have not orchestrated mass murder of innocent people. But however, what I don't understand is that because of the Jewish Holocaust, the Germans are being forced to pay, excuse me if I just sneeze, pardon, right? The Germans are forced to pay this, if you like, alleged crime for what had transpired, bearing in mind that every country has a brutal history. No country can put their hand on their heart and say that and argue they have not carried out genocide. We're all guilty of that, every single one of us. And the Bible says, let he without sin cast the first stone. Whatever Germany was up to, Britain benefited from. Indeed, the royal family have connections to the Nazi party. And indeed, was it Queen Victoria who supported the Nazi party? But it's interesting how the British keep that swept aside. So the Germans are forever apologizing for this past. I don't see the British people or the Americans apologizing for the African slave trade. So why should Zionist Jews forever remind the Germans of the Holocaust? Should America and Britain be reminded about regarding the African slave trade? Of course not. People must move on. We cannot live in the past. However, the Zionist Jews are deliberately cooking and stoking up this horrible political, vicious atmosphere because they have an agenda. A Jewish brother by the name of Nathaniel argued that the Jewish agenda is to destroy Europe. That is a Jewish Zionist agenda, which is why they promote LGBT, they promote homosexuality, however, and even multiculturalism. The Jews who are behind Hollywood, they push this agenda. However, you don't see the Jews marrying out. But they don't mind you. I'm not saying interracial mixing is wrong. I'm not saying that. What I'm arguing is a Jewish conspiracy. If you don't believe me, research it. Now, what I find interesting is that the Jews who hate the Muslims don't mind breaking down the nationalistic spirit of Germany so that Germans bring in more Muslims, more Muslim refugees. We need to understand that behind chaos, there's usually order. Just because you are promoting your enemy does not mean you don't have an overall agenda. So the Jews pushing Muslim refugees into Germany It does not mean the Jews love the Muslims. They're killing two birds with one stone. Now, we must remember that the Semitic people, or the Jews and the Muslims, they regard the Gentiles, meaning you and I, the Gentiles, to be filthy rags. We're shit, we're dirt. We're nothing more than pagans, heathens. So the Jews and the Muslims have a conspiracy and a plot to destroy the European civilizations, hence which is why they are forcing and pushing the LGBT agenda and destroying a sense of family and nationalism. And please note that the head of the LGBT movement in America was a Jewish woman who was not married to a woman but to a Jewish man, but she was pushing the LGBT agenda. Please also note that Israel, believe it or not, right, have the, how can I put it, are the most embracing, I think it's Tel Aviv, of the homosexual movement, which is contradictory because Israel's supposed to be, the church calls it, you know, where the spiritual homeland where Christ is going to return. Out of context, you know, these, how can I put it, fundamental Christians, they don't really understand the Bible, so they think Christ is coming back for the Jews, those who told him to clear off. This is what fundamental does for you, whether it's fundamental Christians or fundamental Jews or fundamental Muslims. They get so screwed up, they don't really understand the backdrop of what the Bible's trying to say. Because Jesus is not coming back for no Jews who don't like him. It doesn't make sense. However, let's go back to Germany. So Germans are forever having to apologize to the Jews. And how do they apologize? By bringing in more Muslim refugees. Come, come. Here's my titties. Come and suck on them. Come and suck my milk. And this is what's happening. Now, as a result, Germany has broken down. As a result of Muslim refugees swamping, you know, this beautiful city of Germany, nationalism is torn to pieces. Women are being ravaged and raped, and all because of the Zionist Jews who will not forget the Holocaust. May I remind the Jews that they also trafficked in slavery, African slavery. You made money and profited from African slavery. Should I shove that in your Zionist face? Are you going to pay reparations to the Africans? Should we bring Africans into Israel? Because I know that in Israel, they don't like anyone who isn't Jewish. But they don't mind pushing multiculturalism into Germany, into Britain, into America. And believe it or not, although I'm not against interracial mixing, I've dated many beautiful white women, right? I'm not against it. But however, interracial mixing, which is pushed through Hollywood, is actually a Jewish agenda. They're trying to destroy the very fabric of European civilization. I'm not against interracial, you know, mixing. I'm not against multiculturalism, but the type of multiculturalism that the Zionist Jews are pushing is unhealthy. Which is why, if you look at many interracial families between blacks and whites, the mixed race kids are racially abused. Now that's not healthy mixing. If you're going to end up racially abusing your mixed race children, what kind of mixing is that? What kind of integration is that? It's not a healthy integration. The mixed race kids are being racially abused as a result of this wrong mixing. But this is a Zionist Jewish agenda. Now, anyone doubting what I'm saying, if I will try and send the link. Is Nathuel, a beautiful Jewish brother who actually demonstrates quite beautifully why the Zionist Jews are pushing the LGBT, pushing multiculturalism, unhealthy multiculturalism, and why Germany, to this very day, Germany having to apologize. Why? Not because of what they did to the gypsies, not because of what they did to black people, or the brunettes, or the brown-eyed people, or those who weren't fair-skinned. Not because of that, but purely because the Zionist Jews have an agenda. The Jews never think about anybody else in the Holocaust. All the Jews care about are themselves. What about the brunettes that's been in the Holocaust? What about the homosexuals, allegedly? Allegedly, I can't prove it. But what about the homosexuals who've been in the Holocaust? They're human beings too. I might not agree with the homosexual lifestyle, but I don't agree with killing them. So what about homosexuals? How come the Jews, all they care about is themselves? I never see the Jews ever speak about anybody else. They're a selfish, religious, fundamentalist group. They're very selfish, self-driven. The whole world is interpreted for Jews. The whole economy is run and owned by Jews. The media is run and owned by Jews. Hollywood is run and owned by Jews. And therefore we need to understand that in this matrix and design, the agenda that is being played. Sometimes we see the Jews and Muslims, antagonism. But what we don't realize, these two forces which hate the Gentiles, you and I, they will team up together because they are both Semitics. They claim they're both from Abraham. Although the Jews have the covenant through Isaac, and the Muslims come through Ishmael, which has no covenant. They're not from God, they're from the devil, Ishmael, the wild child. But the covenant, Isaac, the child of promise, this is what the Jews' lineage are. But they're still Semitic. They have the same father, Father Abraham. So they believe you and I, we're filthy pigs. We're filthy pigs. The Jews and the Muslims, on that they agree. And therefore on that purpose they will destroy European civilization with that understanding that we're not Muslims and we're not Jews. But of course they use, if you like, the Western world for their benefit. They use the Western world, for their own agenda. Back to my topic. So the Germans are forever apologizing for something that happened to the Jews in 1930s. 1930s. They're still apologizing. When are the Jews going to apologize for making money and trafficking in the African slave trade? When are the Jews going to apologize for stirring up Britain and America to go to war in the 1940s against Hitler? Hitler who looked after them, Hitler who gave them a home. Look, don't take my word for it, look it up. Why Hitler turned against the Jews. Look, if you invited me into your home, you invited me to your home and said, come, eat bread and drink some wine. I said, oh, you're lovely, you're making me feel hospitable. Thank you very much. And you say, come, eat the best fruit of the vine. Eat the apples from the tree. Feed at home. You're welcome. And you give me hospitality. And you give me a nice warm bed to sleep on. Say, put on the log fire, keep yourself nice and warm. I said, oh, lovely, what a lovely host. Then what do? I'm not satisfied with your generosity. I'm not satisfied with your kindness. I decide to ravish your wife ravish your girlfriend. You think, what an ungrateful rat. I've given him this. I invite him into my home and he ravished my wife or ravished my girlfriend. You think, what kind of a wicked brute he is. Get out my house, you're no good, get out. And you get a shotgun and you shoot me. Why? Because you gave me all this love, you gave me all this generosity, and I dare to ravish the breast of your wife. Having a good squeeze, like this, like dumplings. You think this man's no good. I opened my home to him and he abused me, my kindness. That's what the Jews did to Hitler. You need to look at behind every walls. The Jews are behind it. Do your history. Don't take me seriously. Do your history. My patriotic friend, who's a historian, is a Christian, and he loves the Jews. He thinks Christ come back for the Jews. It's that mentality. And he's an historian. But even historians are brainwashed. And now he's begun to realize that because all the Jews had was money, the Jews began to use their monopoly of money to influence the banking system, influence politics, our government. And that's why the Jews have so much power today in the world. It's interesting, you can't speak ill against the Jews and you can't speak ill against the Muslims. Can't you see the agenda that's been set up for us? You can't speak ill against the Jews and you can't speak ill against the Muslims. These are what they call Semitic, from the seed of Abraham. Can't you see the game that's being played? Think about it. I'll give you 2 seconds. Well, I might do a bit of singing while I'm talking. Shall I sing? No. You might faint if I start to sing. You might pass out. You know, but in all seriousness, and that is, it's interesting how the 3 unholy Trinity that we can't offend, the 3 unholy Trinity being the, if you like, the opposite to the Christian holy Trinity. You can't offend Muslims, you can't offend the Jews, and you can't offend LGBT. You can offend Christians anytime you want. You can offend white men, you can offend white women, but you can't offend LGBT, Jews, or Muslims. Now think about that for a second. Hence why the Jews, the Zionist Jews, are breaking down Europe, breaking it down. And we need to see the game that's being played. It's all biblical, it's all historical. And poor Germany having to go on their knees like a cattle, like a beast, like a cow, like a hog. Germany having to apologize over and over again, putting her country at risk, just because the Jews say so, because the Zionist Jews have money. He who has the money, look, the government don't control the world. Murdoch, Rothschild, these billionaires, multi-billionaires, Bill Gates, they run the world. Your government don't run the world. Why the hell do you think they don't pay taxes? Think about it. He that don't pay taxes run the world. They're the ones who dictate the invisible tapestry, the metaphysical design that controls our lives. And the Jews, they decide, believe it or not, what Muslims to bring into our countries, to break it down, is called collateral damage. It's called lesser evil, but it has a bigger design, a Jewish design. Do you follow? It's a very deep video, and I promise to go deeper into this subject. I want to go deeper into how we are set up, by this Jewish Luciferian system to break down our values, our patriotism, our nationalism, our family, our identity, and we can't see what's happening. We can't see it. Please. There is no copyright on this video. On any of my videos, please share them. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.
You can't handle the truth!